Thank you. So for those who don't know, my name is Yogesh and I'm based in Istanbul in Turkey. And our theme for discussion this morning, our panel discussion, is about self-respect. And quite often the theme comes up, how to develop self-respect. Well, the title which has been given to this morning's discussion is How I Developed Self-Respect, past tense. And so we have three experienced souls here who will share some experiences, thoughts, ideas, secrets of what self-respect means. And it is, of course, perhaps the most central theme in human life anyway, let alone our spiritual journey, but human life anyway, I think, is based upon a person's level of self-respect. And of course, out in the world there is many definitions of what self-respect is, but they look at another kind of self. When we come to Baba and we hear Baba's Gyan, both of these words we begin to redefine. First, of course, what self means. This takes on a newer and deeper definition, deeper than we could possibly imagine. And then also the word respect. And how do you truly respect yourself? What would be the definition of self-respect? What would be the signs of a person who is developing self-respect within their own life? How would it reflect in their relationships, in the way they handle situations? And then, of course, how do you actually do that? What are the steps involved in going up the ladder of self-respect? Is it in fact a step-by-step process? Is it something that you do in jumps? Is there something called some kind of quantum leap which enables you to suddenly develop your self-respect? How does it all work? So for the next little while or so, we'll be exploring some of these ideas. And the way we'll plan it is we'll hear from each of the three different speakers here, and also there'll be a chance then to open up to have a conversation, discussion and questions from all of us here. And so first up, I'd like to call upon Sister Usha. Usha sitting here at the other end of the stage. She's based in Durban in South Africa. She looks after Baba's work there and also is part of the team, the national team for looking after service in South Africa, and came into Gyan at quite a young age, at the age of 19, which was back in the mid-80s. So many experiences in service, but also going through the different stages of growing up just as a human being. So, Usha, what is self-respect to you, and how do you understand this word?
Om Shanti, good morning. The first thing that helped me understand even the process is when Baba says self-respect, it's really to realize that this identity that Baba has given us, that we are not these physical bodies but spiritual beings, is the first step for me. And what was amazing is that when you come to Baba, you hear this knowledge that I'm a soul, and you think you've got it. But to actually live as a soul is perhaps the process that takes so many years. And even though from the first day I don't think I was confused about what the soul is and the qualities of the soul, but what has taken me time has to live in that awareness. And today, when Daddy was talking about Rup Basant, very much that whole idea is that you understand the information, but to live in the experience of that knowledge is really what our aim is. And so the respect that I give myself then is to live in that awareness of the quality of the soul I am. And that is really the challenge, because what happens is that it's almost like the soul has one level of awareness because of its body consciousness, which is still creating an impression on it. And when you discard one layer, you understand who you are yet again on another level, and then another level of body consciousness is discarded, and then yet again you discover who you are. And so it's been a very beautiful process, and actually a very wonderful feeling of newness, that from the first day that I was introduced to myself as a soul and fell in love with the idea, every time a layer is discarded, I once again fall in love with who I am. And that is perhaps one of the most beautiful things. And when we live in the values of the soul, and we can see ourselves doing what we understand ourselves to be, we then entrust ourselves with respect. And so in a way, that's the way I understand self-respect, is seeing myself live a life according to who I understand I am.
Can you share some stories of a time when a layer of what you thought was you was challenged and fell away? And how did you feel about that? What happened? And how did it happen?
Well, I can remember a very early period, in fact the first year of my coming to Baba. And what happened is that coming from an environment where we need to constantly be obedient to our parents, and being 19, my mother always was telling me, you're not yet 21, you can't do what you want to do. And so I knew that I couldn't, in a way, do, even though I felt quite confident what I need to do with Baba, there was always somebody else giving me something to do. And I did something one day which almost challenged the love my mother would have had for me. And I did something which was totally against her will, but according to Baba Srimad, it was accurate. And I experienced a deep amount of maybe feelings that I would have never liked to have from someone who I love so much. But what happened is that having become detached from the dependency of that love from someone who's even your mother, and then to feel that even without that relationship you still can feel love from God, that perhaps was the grossest thing, of disconnecting from a physical relationship and connecting to Baba as my mother. So that was a very powerful feeling, but I know what the experience was there is that I sat in Baba's room and I could actually feel that I'm a soul. It wasn't like information that I'm a soul, but I felt I was a soul. And it was a very courageous feeling actually, because at that point I knew that now nothing can stop me. I think that was the beginning of the first layer going.
You took on service responsibility at quite a young age, I think. What challenges did you face at that time, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, we had quite an interesting experience in the beginning, because being in a Lokik age, so young, and I think where I grew up, there was quite a strong Indian community still, because in South Africa at that time we were quite segregated. So I was living in a previously Indian community, and there used to be one specific brother who was quite an established businessman in our community. And he had a very good heart, but I must be honest, every time we read the Murali or gave class, he would comment in such an amazing way that he would actually totally, if someone's commenting and not encouraging, it can totally throw you out in a sense. But what I remembered so beautifully is that at the end of the day, just saying to Baba, and I think this is actually where the development of self-respect is so good, is that we can come onto Baba's Gadi or onto the stage of service and be aware that we are speaking the right words and doing the right thing, and sometimes not pay attention to the consciousness that we have. Because I think I was in the early stages just paying so much attention to the information, the content. So in coming to dealing with this person, what was lovely is that I used to say to Baba, Baba, it's all you and nothing but you. And I know even just invoking Baba in that way, I found eventually that the soul was calming down. And so those were some of the things. But one of the other things that I found quite interesting was that when you're logically very young, you find yourself having to always, you're a custodian of such powerful wisdom. You're not supposed to put yourself in front, but you also want people to take you a bit seriously. And so the only thing I found that was very good is to be natural and not try and even make Gyan important. But if you live it in a way that is valuable to you. And the one thing I found that was very good is that for me, happiness was a quality that maybe came to me as a gift from Baba. And I chose to just always remain happy. And so you don't have to prove to anyone that you're doing the right thing. But if they can experience your happiness, then they can feel something is happening which they would like. And in a way that helped me a great deal.
Have you always found it easy to accept Baba's love? Because sometimes there is this feeling that a soul maybe feel, well, I'm not quite worthy of this, or Baba loves others more than he loves me. Did you go through these kinds of issues? And if you didn't, those you've seen go through these issues, why does that happen, and what do you have to do to get over that?
I don't think I ever had this feeling that Baba loved me less, but I used that point of knowledge, and I once remember somebody telling me that only if you're very close to the seniors, then Baba loves you. And that confused me actually, because if I'd sit with Baba and I saw how Baba was using me, I really felt that, my connection with Baba was very good. But we were living in South Africa, we hardly had any seniors, and we were quite distant in a sense. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm not really good enough. So I did actually feel indirectly that if I wasn't close to the seniors, then this thing would happen. But I think what happened in the process is that we all need a kind of verification from a human source to tell us how good we are. And this perhaps is the biggest mistake that, if ever I think about, I made, was to do that. But it's directly linked to the fact that as long as you are thinking you're a body, you're going to need verification from a bodily being, whether that person is a senior or a peer, or even if you were doing a public talk and if the audience responded well, you're looking out from them to actually say, well done, it's very good. And that's really the mistake, I think, that when I realized that I'm not here to actually make anybody love me or appreciate me. My reason for actually stepping onto the stage of service was that I have received something so beautiful from God that has actually changed my life. And all I want to really do is to offer you an opportunity to do the same. And so then it was like not my responsibility to make you feel anything about me or even appreciate me, but just take the message. And then that was the first step to start, working through the process. I think it's a thick bush to work through. And again, I really feel it's layer by layer. Nothing happens overnight, and you are constantly challenged. But when we use Baba's Murli as a means of getting verification, what I used to do is that if something happened in the day where I felt my feelings were a little bit disturbed, where I wasn't feeling confident, then I would say to Baba, Baba, why is this happening? And really the next day when you come and listen to Baba's Murli, he's just talking to you. And for me that was a very powerful way of getting personal tuition from Baba and him guiding me to the point where I can actually see my mistake, use the knowledge and help myself.
Mm. How do you know that you're not fooling yourself? Like, your self-respect you may feel is very strong, and then suddenly, crash, something happens and you think, how did that happen? And then you realize it wasn't as strong as you thought. I mean, what are the signs of really having genuine self-respect? Is there a litmus test?
Well, I think just for each one of us to be listening to Baba's Murli takes a lot of self-respect. Because each day, Baba is exposing us. One, he's exposing our greatness. And secondly, he is creating a mirror for us to see what we need to change to get to that space. And as far as I can remember, I have never missed a Murli because I didn't feel good enough to go and sit in the class. And for me, that is the test. But I'm not saying to you I've never ever had a problem with self-respect. I've never had a problem in a sense that it's thrown me out, where I've been knocked out to the point where depression or sleep or, forget the world and not look at people. I don't think I've reached that stage. But it's like a space in my Brahman life where I'm just doubting how I'm doing things, and it's almost an internal conversation. And so I think for me the main thing is that if I could always feel the enthusiasm to wake up for Amrit Vela and face myself and Baba, and then further be alert and sit and listen to Baba's Murli and be prepared to change again. I would say if we continually do that, that's a good test. Because somehow we make excuses for not waking up for Amrit Vela or not listening to Murli, because we could say we're busy or we have to go to work or whatever it is. But I think the main thing is that these are our two main tools, which is for growing and for standing up bright and being powerful. And when we don't use them, we're running away from ourselves. So for me it would be, the test is that if I'm avoiding or I'm making excuses for Amrit Vela, and maybe being a little bit too relaxed in the Murli class, these would be signs that my self-respect is waning. And really this is my understanding.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will come back to you later. If anybody has a question for her, just write it down and we'll come to those in a little while. So next up, preparing himself, is Brother David. And David is based in Leeds, in the north of England. And he was one of the first BKs outside of India. And he was 24 years old when he came into Gyan. And as a couple, you may know David and Sister Maureen, his Lokik wife. So, David, self-respect, how do you do it?
Om Shanti, good morning. I'm curious to know, who's here for the first time in Madhuban? Okay. Who's been in Gyan 5 years or less? Okay. Gosh, where to start? If I'm being very open and honest, this has been quite a challenge for me. It's been an interesting journey. Some of you may know Sister Maureen. So we came as quite a young couple. I think we were probably one of the first Western couples to come to Baba. It's interesting when you look at the self-respect, and the opposite of that, of course, is ego, and the other side of the coin of ego is not feeling you're good enough and maybe having a lack of self-confidence. And so when I came, it was the second one. I wasn't really quite sure why I was here. If you ask Sister Maureen her experience, I think it was the other way. She had a lot of confidence. I think she from the past birth, I think, with Baba. And it was quite an interesting experience when we came, because I know Maureen won't mind me sharing this, but she's working on her overconfidence and is walking around saying, I am nothing, I'm nothing. And I'm trying to work on building up my confidence. And so Maureen's saying this, and it was quite an interesting experience. And although I was 24, which actually feels quite old compared to these guys, I wasn't very worldly mature in the sense. I mean, my misspent childhood was sport, so if you give me a cricket bat or a football or a tennis racket, then I'm quite confident. But I never really had any worldly experience in a sense. Even with Sister Maureen, we met when we were kind of quite young. We went out for quite a while, got married, and then came to Baba after 18 months. And I studied dentistry. I stayed with my parents in Liverpool, so I never really kind of got out and about. And in that sense, I suppose I had a fairly tame, fairly kind of pure upbringing, comparatively so for Western guys. And it was interesting, Daddy saying this morning, with the mall, you can't just catch it with your head, but it's your heart. And for me, it's kind of interesting you say, we had a very close connection with the seniors because we bumped into the BKs during the Edinburgh Festival. We were on our way up to a spiritual community that we'd visited many times, Findhorn. Both of us were studying really a lot of spiritual stuff and searching, and we bumped into the BKs there, met Sister Sudesh, had a couple of sessions, went down to London, had the course, getting up early, going to the Morley all at the same time, and then basically just hearing about all the principles in a couple of days and just starting to follow them immediately. And when I look back, I'm not quite sure why that happened. I mean, I couldn't, even now I was struggling, well, why am I here? I don't feel I fit in. Maureen, on the other hand, seemed to have a lot of confidence, and we know that was from last birth. And yet, my first connection was Sister Sudesh, one of the seniors. When we drove down to London, we literally just parked the car, and Sister Genti and Daddy Janki were coming out of Tennyson Road, which was the original place, into this tiny little car, which Sister Genti used to drive at that time. It looked like there was no driver because she was so small. And so that was our first introduction, and so off we went with Daddy and Genti to a housewarming, and at the beginning there was a very close connection. Now it seems wonderful, but we used to eat with them a lot, have meals with them at Tennyson Road, and so that was my kind of upbringing. But deep below that, there was a kind of a feeling that I wasn't really good enough. It was a kind of it was illogical, because the way I came into Baba and just accepted everything said that something very deep was accepting Baba, and it's true, and I accept that now, but at that time that feeling in the mind didn't match up, and so it took me quite some time to come to terms with that. And then the other interesting part of the story, I mean, again, the whole story of service. Usually for most Brahmins, it's, I've taken so much for Baba and now I want to share it with my brothers and sisters. And for me, that really came a long time afterwards. For me, the relationship with service was a little bit of a love-hate relationship. And the funny thing was, Sister Maureen was still at Leeds for a couple of years. She used to come and go to London and Scotland, and then I can remember this time where we'd arranged all these talks, and then Maureen had to go away to Scotland, and I said, oh, well, who's going to do the talks? I said, you'll have to cancel them. She goes, you're going to do them. So, I mean, actually, when I was playing football, I was captain of the team, and I was called the mouth. Quite vocal. But in terms of actually being with people in that situation, I would have died, actually, really. And I can remember being sent out for my first talk, once when Maureen lost her voice, actually, that's right. She got laryngitis, and with a prepared speech, and I was sort of marched off to give this talk. Luckily, it was on the tree, which was my favourite topic. Now, what happened? Maureen went to London. Sister Waddy went to America for 6 weeks. Maureen went to London for 6 weeks just to be with Daddy. Waddy never came back from America, and Maureen's still down in London. That was about 25 years ago. And so there's little old me actually holding the baby.
Yeah.
And it was quite challenging. And in essence, it's taken me a long time to actually realize that I'm here because of what I am, and that even though I do things differently maybe to the other Brahmins, and I can't be this one and that one, there's something in me that is kind of okay, and I think it's kind of useful to Baba.
Kind of useful.
Kind of useful.
Okay. David, you've been in Gyan now over 30 years, and one of the questions that is perhaps one of the most common questions amongst Baba's children is, what is my role? You know, you come to Baba, you start going to the center, and you see all different kinds of service going on, people doing all kinds of wonderful things, and you may wonder, well, what is my role? How do I fit in? And for some time you may compare yourself with others or compete. How do you discover your role? What do you have to do that? And how do you feel when you have discovered your role?
There's two things. I mean, sometimes the words are interchangeable, but role and part. One is an external role, and one's an internal role. And I feel when Baba's talking about what is your role, he's actually talking about the internal role. Yes, externally, I found myself looking after a centre and now involved in fairly different service activities, and that's allowed me to cultivate self-respect, but only when I'm connecting it back to my inner role. In other words, and I would describe my inner role as how it is that Baba sees me. And our generation had the fortune of having a lot of personal meetings with Baba, and for me, some of the things that Baba said at that time, although you didn't accept them at that time, or I found it difficult to accept at that time, became a kind of not just a life raft, but actually a signpost. Like, one thing Baba said to me, and it was a very nice thing actually, that Baba says Baba and the family have a lot of love for you and faith in you because you have a clean heart. And at that time I actually found it quite difficult to accept that love. And I realized it wasn't because of anything external, it was because of me. I wasn't quite sure if I felt worthy. And the problem was comparison. I was trying to think, if you ask this question, the thing that kills self-respect is comparing. And so what I've learned is that I look at my role on an internal level, and I touch base with the blessings that I got personally from Baba, and also, obviously, for those of you who don't have that chance to meet Baba personally, is to take those blessings from the Morley and take them personally. Because if I'm taking my self-respect from an external role, even the service role, it's just like all the different roles we had before we came to Baba, and my identity is based on that. And then I slide those over into GAN, and they can go. I mean, like a couple of years ago, I had a journey of care through cancer, which was an interesting journey. But after my treatment, when I came back from India, Daddy Janki said, "You're going to Oxford, forget about Leeds, you ain't going back." Now, I think that's because she could see the way the body was, but actually I'm back in Leeds now, but it's interesting. Now, that was a very interesting experience for me, because all my spiritual colleagues and friends from the centres in Leeds and all in the north of England came, and they said, "What's going to happen? Are you coming back?" And I said, and at that time I realised, oh gosh, I'm no longer the centre coordinator. I'm not looking after the area. I'm not a dentist anymore. And I thought, oh, who am I? And actually it was a bit spooky, because you then have to go right back to understanding deeply who you are from the inside. And even now, if I'm being really honest, it's been a strange year. In one sense, I had to put my mother in a home last year. My father's been quite ill. I've had to spend a lot of time with my parents after being in a centre for so long. And it raised quite a lot of interesting questions in my mind. And I don't know why, for some reason, that this last little while there was like a crisis of confidence. And I was starting to see some of my spiritual friends around, of course, who I know, and I could see that as soon as I started comparing what they were doing, whether I'm in this meeting or that meeting, whether yes I am and no I'm not, it just kills your self-respect. And so it's really nice actually, because one of the seniors said to me last night, "Are you in the meetings?" I said, "No, not this time." They said, "Good." And so actually what I've been doing just this last couple of days is just revisiting my childhood. In fact, I sat in one of Atom Prakash's classes yesterday and just sat there and tried to sit there as if it was the early days, just being a child, and it gave a lovely feeling.
You mentioned about taking support from your role, your service role, maybe your service position, if we can say that. It's true that if you base your self-respect upon something like that, eventually you will crash, some pain will come. How can you recognize if you're taking power from your service role or position before the crash? How can you work it out for yourself so you can adjust yourself? Are there any signs of that?
Yeah, it's called pain, mental pain. You get tense, and it's interesting what you were saying, Usha. For me, when I came to Baba, seeing people like Sister Genti, I think the greatest thing that I really wanted was to be natural. And for me, one of the big signs of self-respect is just being natural, literally being yourself. And so if you're not being yourself, you feel spiritual pain. Your thoughts race, you get tension, how many people will come to the talk, what will people think about this, what will people think about that. And so it actually takes away the beauty of being a Brahmin, which is really, to enjoy. And I think in Madhaban, in Pandit Bhavan, there's a lovely picture somewhere that says, you are a special actor no one can play your part better than you. And when you think about it, that is the first lesson. It's soul consciousness, and yet we sort of forget that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And we'll come back to you in a while. Now let's move on to Cherie. And Cherie has been relatively fewer years on this path, around 6 years. Took Gyan in Holland and is now based in London, and also part of a yugal, a couple. So I'd like to hear from you, Shri. What do you understand by self-respect?
Om Shanti. I like the analogy Bala touched upon it in the Murli today about the beggar and the prince. And Prashant plays a lot with it in Cambridge, and basically when we're soul conscious, that's the experience of the prince. The kingdom, the royal family, in attitude, the one who has everything. And the beggar, the one who is in body consciousness and needs, whether it's confirmation or needs some position, possession or whatever. So I like to play with that actually, that when we're in our true self-respect, we actually feel almost like that actually, we have everything. And we're actually separate from the drama and separate from the role. And actually that the role can't define who I am. And I love that part actually, and I need to remind myself more often of that everything that's happening in the role and in the drama actually really has everything to do with Cherie, but has nothing to do with me. So I think that for me keeps it very clear who I am and what true self-respect is.
And how would you measure your personal level of self-respect?
I guess when I get caught up in the drama and get, like David was saying, upset or emotionally disturbed, I feel some kind of pain, then I know I'm in Cherie and I'm trapped.
Does it take you long, or do you quickly get out of those, those troughs which we sometimes fall into?
Depends on how awake I am.
Pardon?
It depends on how awake I am. And sometimes, you can spot it easily and say, okay, fine, let go. And sometimes you get, it's like sometimes I have experienced that I'm in that for months. And then all of a sudden I realize, hold on, what's going on? And then I step back. So it depends on, lately it's been less time. So I think that is measuring progress, how quickly I wake up from the illusion again. And but I find you get easily trapped again in the drama, in the role.
How about dealing with, for example, dealing with failure? How do you handle that?
I think that's a good measurement because, like Baba tells us often, the drama is about failure and it's about success, it's about victory and defeat and happiness and sorrow. So although we're in Brahmin life and we have knowledge, it doesn't mean we won't have defeat anymore. And it doesn't mean we won't experience sorrow anymore. Cherie will still go through her things and make her mistakes and whatever. And I think for myself, when I can accept that things will happen, I will make mistakes, in the road, it's all part of that. But the easier I actually can accept it and deal with it without being affected, I think that's a measure how awake I am. And it's like these things have happened, where it's like you would think major mistakes or big failures. And then to actually realize that all the work that we have been doing all the time, actually strength is building up. And so you face challenges a lot more easier when they come.
Can you share an instance or share a story when you felt that, but you were able to lift yourself up?
Yeah.
What was happening?
I think being a young Brahmin, one of the things that I find is often I'm giving a task or asked to do something where like David said, I think, me? You know? I'm not sure. But then, Baba's words, have trust, have faith. You're the instrument, Baba will take care of it. Fine. And I think once it was, I think in Oxford, one of the programs there where something happened. And, I think interesting in the drama, everyone has their own perspective because we wear different glasses and we see from different angles. So although I might think I didn't make a mistake, from somebody else's perspective, you did make a mistake. And I think at that point I was criticized so strongly. But then I think I was able to see it. Actually, I didn't realize what was going on, but I think very much the first thing I did, physically also, is really move back. And at that point was able to remain very detached and say, okay, it is fine. And actually apologize at that moment, although I didn't feel I made a mistake. So although, apologize, say, yeah, it's fine, and actually play the role that was required and calm everything down. And everything was fine. I think that was a big test of self-respect. And I think more recently when somebody close to Shri in the Lokik family, something actually quite severe happened, which actually I realized that I needed people in my environment to be okay and to behave very well, because that would actually, that's still that ego. It's not real self-respect. That would actually mean that I'm successful, and that was challenged in a big way recently. And actually, the first reaction was actually to judge that and say that's not right and should be put right. And actually, I realized that's not the way to deal with these things, and to actually step back and accept whatever was happening and to be okay with it, and to be absolutely fine. I think that was one of the key challenges recently, to accept the drama as it is, and to realize actually it's not saying anything about me, but also not saying anything about the other soul, whatever we go through in the drama. So.
Do you find it easy to forgive yourself or to correct yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think when I'm awake, yes. When I'm trapped, no.
Okay, can you tell us a bit more what you mean by awake? What does that mean?
I think when I'm in the consciousness and the experience of the prince. So when I realize that I, the soul, like Usha-ben was also saying, that this is the drama and I am separate from Shri. So my true self-respect, my happiness, my joy, the value I give to the self has nothing to do with what's happening in Shri's drama or around her. But I maintain my peace, my love, especially for the self, but also for others.
But do you feel that if you have that attitude, could people feel maybe you become irresponsible? If people feel that about you, can that happen?
I think it could happen, but for me in these situations, I actually probably was able to deal with things more responsibly. And maybe it's because then you're less emotionally involved in things, and less needy, I think. You don't need things to be a certain way. I'm not sure it answers the question.
Okay, because from what I've seen, you seem very calm, very placid, very cool. So I'm sure there's a lot of work going on below the surface to bring about that sense of outer calm. Any special strategies or things you tell yourself to keep yourself going?
I think one of the key things for me is coming back and actually working on the experience of the prince, really experiencing what that means and how that feels, and really then, making it clear for myself the difference between Shri and the self. And for me, I know that has helped a lot. to feel that, to sense that, the value and of being soul conscious, and to building that experience. If I let that go and I don't work on that, then I get trapped more often, because then I become more needy of the drama.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, so we've heard a number of different ideas there.
Sorry, Yogesh, but I'm just thinking about what Sherry just said now. And when David spoke about Atam Prakash's class, I remember in the early days, the things that he used to say is like, just remember that you're a being of light. And he used to give us this one exercise that in 1 minute, can you monitor in that minute for what period of time were you soul conscious and for what period of time you were body conscious. I think Yogesh Bhai, you'll remember those things that Atam Prakash Bhai used to do for us. And one practice that, because I was trying to just monitor and maybe just question myself when I said that, I don't have those moments. What I was really wanted to say is that life has really been hectic. But if I have to tell you the things I've been through and the way I feel about how they've been, it's been two different things. So the challenges have really been great. But this idea of practicing I'm a soul, I used to almost do this like a broken record. I'm a soul, I'm not this body, I'm a soul, I'm not this body, I'm a soul, I'm not this body. And I used to do that like as soon as I see something happening and my thoughts are racing, I'd actually just go into this mantra, even though Baba says that you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say anything through your mouth. But I would either start saying it or then just repeat it in my mind. And so that was something very, very good for me to hold that vibration of negativity away from me. And the potential actually of getting involved was so great. One of the things I know for myself as well is that at the moment I'm really aware that this soul has this awareness of being very clever because of having a clear understanding of Baba's knowledge and whatever. And subtly sometimes when words come out of this mouth, I'll say, oh, okay, that was very clever. And I'm so aware of observing the ego that follows the soul. But you know what? That's the body conscious me. Me, the soul, is free from that. And so really to always be aware that just because I can see what is wrong with me, I don't have to fall on the floor and become unconscious. Now that I know what's wrong with me, get going with the work. And I think that's the important part, is that we will all constantly, if I say I have self-respect, doesn't mean that I've conquered everything. I'm just putting myself on the field again and again, never to give up. And perhaps that's the way I wanted to pose it. I really didn't want wanted it to sound like I've done all the work and I'm there. I feel that when we do achieve a level of self-respect, we can really begin the work that we have to do, which is conquering body consciousness. Because if we don't get ourselves in the right consciousness, how are we going to work against all those sanskaras that are latent within the soul?
David?
Just going back to what I was saying earlier, that it's very basic gyan which you hear our seniors talk about, but sometimes in the West we tend to complicate things. That Baba says, I came to find you. So all of us here, I've realized this now, Baba did come and find us. And actually when you think about that you can't really get any deeper self-respect than that. I'm God's child. And I go back to that again and again and again. And when I make mistakes, as we constantly do, I just repeat, well, I love you, Baba loves you, I love you, and I forgive you. And I found myself chanting that a little bit.
Do you say that in the mirror?
Sorry?
Do you look in the mirror and say that, or how do you do
I
it?
forgive you. But it's really important because what I've found, and I don't want to scare those of you who are new, but it's like time is a bit short. And so what I'm finding is that the karmic boomerang is coming back quicker and quicker. And so the kind of the spiritual pain, which is the... Yeah, just to keep forgiving myself and just moving on. And one of the things I find is connected with respect is care and value, or valuing. You were saying, what are the signs of respect? I feel looking after yourself, and that means on all levels, you know. So as Brahmins, we have to get the physical right, the mental, but actually making sure that within my Brahmin life, especially when I get involved in service, I'm actually looking after myself. And it feels that those are very much connected. So, and the key is to value. When I value something, I'll respect it, and then I'll look after it. And so the three are connected. So, and the thing for me which I'm trying to practice for the last little while, the thing that connects those three, respect, value and care, okay, I have to understand my own value, and the practice is to appreciate. So to deeply appreciate everything and to appreciate myself is a real key. And for me, you know, because we knew Yogesh was going to ask a few tricky questions, but I kept thinking, well, how have I got my self-respect? It really has to go back to how Baba sees me and taking on the vision that Baba has for me personally in my experiences through the Maulis. And also this relationship with the seniors. So not being... It's not that we're dependent on them, but it's like Daddy said, didn't she? You know, we come to Madhavan to meet Baba, but also to connect with the family. So the family is part of Baba. And so the family can validate us. And I feel the seniors can do that. They can have a vision for us that allows us to get closer to our self-respect. And the thing that keeps me safe is that I know that that vision that they have is from Baba. So the seniors and others, I can feel inspired by them, but I don't get impressed by them. Because if I get impressed by people, I'm going to get affected. But I can feel inspired by them because their way of thinking is closer to Baba.
How do you know whether you're being impressed by someone's virtue, someone's abilities, or in fact you're taking inspiration? Because it might feel like the same thing and to begin with. What's the difference between those two? Anyone can take this up.
I think for me initially, because you know Daddy is so open, she'll say to you things in a very real way. And I know for once, because for me, my self-respect was dependent on, for whatever reason, someone told me you have to be close to the seniors. So I know that even though she was inspiring me, I was very impressed by her. And that brought a lot of sorrow actually. And when I decided to put aside what she was trying to do in terms of helping me, and just try and realize that actually this is a soul that is practicing Baba's knowledge and is a very good example and a very good instrument, and as an elder sister is shown me the way. The certificate I'm going to get is not from that person, it's actually from Baba. And I had to kind of clear that in my own understanding to the point where I knew that when Daddy was saying something was really actually to help me. And let me tell you one thing which I find out. Sometimes when Daddy gives us a lot of attention, it's because we need a lot of help. I don't know if you can actually acknowledge that. Daddy is very clever. She sees who needs more support, and then so she tries and inspires them, and so if they feel good about themselves, and maybe they'll start doing efforts. And so actually it's not about trying to get into the good books of the seniors by whatever means. It's really just to know that what I want to do for myself is to finish any need from anyone and actually become powerful. Now, one example of really being inspired by Daddy is if you were here on Sunday morning and you heard Daddy read the Avyak Murli, and just to sit there and go into her experience of how she took from Baba and how she understood, for me that's inspiration. Because what she's doing is opening my own heart to feel the things that Baba had given to them in the Sakar days. And in a way, it encouraged me to know that I could have the same experience, because through her, Baba was giving me that experience. And for me, that's how I'm now looking at it. If Daddy is giving me any instructions, I know it's because she sees things needs to be changed, and so I must change them. But my inspiration comes from her when she's really, speaking Baba's knowledge. And every day when Daddy's here at 4 o'clock, at the age of 92, conducting Amrit Vela, let's be honest, we have to be inspired, isn't it? And so that's the way I take my inspiration from Daddy. And I really want to be, in a way, respect Baba's system, because that's what she's doing. We collectively are part of the Yagya. When we respect Amrit Vela and we give respect to Baba's Murli, we're actually supporting the Yagya. Because if at any point a Lokik person came into the room when we were listening to Murli and our intellect is everywhere and we're not paying attention, it would give them a very clear idea of what level we valued the study. And if we were giving great attention to it, without saying a word, they would see it from our consciousness. So I feel in that way what Daddy does is really just by her own practice. That's the way she inspires me. But I've given up thinking I need her to say something now, because if she's saying something, it's just to pull my ears or move me along.
It is true that the more spiritually mature we become, the less we need special attention. But yet, when we come into this life, then we do need role models, because how do you translate all this amazing information into practical life? You need role models, and the psychology which we have in the outside world is we do, put people onto pedestals, we do worship them, and to some degree we carry that into Brahmin life until we realize that's not the way to go. So how do you use role models, Shri?
I think connecting to your previous question, I think also when I'm inspired, I take the responsibility of my choices and my decisions. Whilst when you just, we can, just be obedient to our seniors and everybody else and do as they tell us. But with that, I think sometimes we forget that that's also our choice. So, and role models. I agree with you that role models are very important, and that if you have a good role model, that is very beneficial. But I do think, that when Baba says, don't look at anybody, just look at Baba, Brahma Baba, and that his example. And I think that's keeping us safe. And especially, I would say Daddy Janki, that role model, I think for me, I really much, one thing I've learned, Baba, Brahma Baba's example, Dadi Janki, because she's in London. So I see more clearly from her example and from Baba's meetings what it is Baba wants me to become. Other role models I find a bit dangerous, actually, because you get so trapped in other people and become dependent on them. And for me, that's the danger. Even with Dadi Janki, we can become too dependent on her in London and too comfortable with her presence and don't think for ourselves, not churn for ourselves, just sit in class, just take. I think that's a danger. So I don't like to have too many role models, actually.
Right. Okay. David, you ever worshipped anyone?
Yeah, but it was St. John when he played centre forward for Liverpool. It's quite a tricky one, this, because I need to stay close to the family and to the seniors so that I can start understanding what it is that they got from Baba that created them. But ultimately it is about working it out for myself. For me, as I was saying, the safety is that everything is from Baba. And so Daddy is Baba's instrument. We are all Baba's instruments. I mean, that's another thing that's helped me cultivate some self-respect, is that I realize that sometimes Baba uses us. And sometimes Baba will put the thought in our mind that isn't coming in the mind of the seniors, and you just say something casually, and it turns out to be something that's useful, then you realize, oh, gosh. And that's Baba's way of showing me that actually it's Baba, and we just happen to be here for the ride. And for me, that's the safety. And so, yes, I love Daddy dearly and all the seniors and the role models, and I love them because they've modeled something from Baba. And if I miss Baba out, it's dangerous, because otherwise you'll find someone is starting to chant the name of someone who's given a class, or they write nice books, and that's fine, it's a skill, but it's Baba's knowledge, and Baba's made them an instrument, and if they weren't there, Baba would be using someone else. And for me that's become really clear, and it connects to this thing of valuing and appreciating. So I deeply appreciate Daddy for what she's done, and my colleagues and my contemporaries and my seniors. But if it wasn't for Baba, I mean, where were we before we came to Baba? And I can remember years ago when Sister Genti had said something outrageously humble, and we all went, oh gosh, Sister Genti, that's just... And she said, well, I just keep remembering that what I was before I came to Baba, and if it wasn't for Baba, I wouldn't be like this. And so there's a very fine line, isn't there, between appreciating people, because it's okay to appreciate people in Brahmin life. It's okay to say please and thank you as Brahmins, but because there is that human dimension to our interaction, we must have that. But to realize that actually everything is from Baba and through Baba. And so ultimately, I think, well, Baba wasn't here, Daddy Ji's gone. I don't know how long Daddy Janki is going to be around. I mean, she ain't going to live forever, is she? So ultimately, we have to use them as instruments and tools to Baba to show us how to take from Baba and to internalize it in a way that is deeply personal to me. And I can use the family to do that and to help, but I have to do it my way, because otherwise it doesn't work.
It's true that feeling impressed at some point will be followed by feeling depressed. Yeah. Okay, would anybody like to ask a question or share a viewpoint? If so, we have a microphone up here at the front. I Usually people wait for the first person to go there. So imagine the first person has gone already and you're number 2. Would that make it easier? If you could also just say your name and where you're from.
Hufid, from Israel. I wanted to ask about this issue of its inspiration and yet taking support. And what if you are as if you are possessed with someone? I mean, you take inspiration, but then it's like you always go there. So you talked about it, but then I don't have the question in full, but if you can more elaborate on this. What if you have inspiration, you appreciate that person, but then it comes to such, like you are always thinking about him, it's almost as you are possessed.
Okay, and who's that question to? Is it to any one of the panel? Okay, maybe Usha, would you like to take that up?
It sounds like if you're getting possessed by someone, if they're occupying your mind, then it's more like an attachment. And so I think that's really where, when you think about attachment, it's like we use somebody to make ourselves whole. And generally, we do get inspired by someone who does the things totally opposite to us. And so, you're right, it's a bit confusing in a sense, because it is the object that will be guiding you to add the things that is missing in you. But that's perhaps where we need to really just say to ourselves, I can become whole myself, and I use that person's speciality to guide my inner qualities. And the thing is that if at the moment you're not feeling anything and you just are possessed by the soul, what will happen is that you're going to suffer. And what will happen is that Baba will go out of your intellect. And when Baba goes out of your intellect, nobody can help you. And so the one thing for myself I've always used is that, because over the years there's been many, many, many beautiful souls on the journey that has supported the souls. And then they've either died or they've gone away, or and then you end up back to square one. And for me, what I've realized is that the intellect that Baba has given me is very delicate. And if I allow a human being into it, Baba can't sit in it. So if that person is even coming into your remembrance, at that point ask yourself, who do you want to get closer to, Baba or that person? So if you keep making the choice, it's also a solution of how to get the ghost out of your intellect. And it really is a very practical thing you have to do all the time. So if you have the habit anyway of observing the thoughts in your mind and you see where your thoughts are going, immediately ask yourself the question and do the thing that you need to do, get closer to Baba. And how do we get closer to Baba? First, we have to become aware that we are souls, and in the awareness of being a soul, then we can connect to Baba. And so sometimes when the intellect's already trapped in another human form, it's very difficult to remember Baba. So then the practice of soul consciousness gives the soul quite a lot of support and strength, which then enables the soul to actually start relinking with Baba. I think one thing that for me was perhaps a frightening experience is at a point when I used to sit in front of Baba's picture and I couldn't connect to Baba. And I used to say, Baba, you're supposed to be right there. And so that's when I realized actually how our intellect can be consumed. So, the beauty of Baba's knowledge is such that as soon as we sit in the feeling of being a soul, we go inwards and we immediately experience ourselves. And when that's not happening, then you have to see where is it trapped. So that's a way of checking as well.
You mentioned, if I could come back to that, Usha, a few times about being a soul, practicing soul consciousness. It's true that sometimes this phrase also can become a cliche. Can you just say what you mean by being soul conscious?
Really just to turn the attention inwards and feel the presence of the being of energy within. And literally, just like, for example, if I'm sitting now, even being aware that I'm not on the chair, but I'm actually here. And for me, it might sound, to you it might sound very basic and, very, how can I say, well, really basic. But for me, that's the only way to move out of the drama into my real self. And I remember when we had a little meditation laboratory with the Peace of Mind group, same thing, we just sat quietly and I did a commentary and I said to them, okay, just visualize this being of energy in the center of the forehead, this being of peace, and now open your eyes and introduce yourself to the person in front of you. In your mind, just say to them, I'm this being of peace, I'm a pure being of light. And that's what I do. Nothing too technical, nothing too difficult. Just I know that the awareness I want to be is away from matter and into a space of energy, which is peace and love. And so I tell myself this as much as possible. But with the feeling, because you start feeling the peace and the love, and it's like immediately the thoughts stop and any outside feeling changes, and you start creating the feeling that you want, which is within you.
Thank you. Okay, would either of you two like to respond to that question?
One thing that's nice, and we used it in the SML, is about the hero. This the exercise on the heroes. When we make somebody our hero, we put somebody on a pedestal, and this exercise actually shows us that what we see in the other person is not necessarily has anything to do with them, but it has everything to do with the quality that you project on the other person. So when we are putting somebody on a pedestal, I find it helpful to remind myself that what I am projecting, what I am seeing, I'm actually projecting onto somebody else. So that's more to do with me than actually about the other person. So it's nice actually to look at it that way and to see what you see in the other person and what you admire in the other person, and actually to bring it back to you. That it is your quality that you are projecting, and maybe it is something you need to do something with. So that is something that came to me that I found very useful.
It's like when introducing meditation to people, and they say, when I went for a walk by the river or by the ocean, I felt really peaceful. Or when I see the sun setting, I feel really peaceful. And of course, the big thing happens for people is when they start to realize, and you ask them, well, where is that peace? Is it in the water or the countryside? And of course they say, no, it's in me. And then they start to see that the lake, the book, all these things are just simply triggers for something that's inside them. And of course then they can use those imagery and they can use those things, but knowing that that's inside them. And I think it's very much this when we get attracted to someone. And I've thought about this quite deeply. Even in the relationship of male and female, you can feel attracted to someone, and it's not really physical, but there's something that's attractive about them, and then you realize it's the quality. And once you understand that, it means you can actually draw that quality from them without getting caught up in the physicality, which of course is a bit dangerous. It's a body conscious. And also then again, taking that other step is that that quality is manifesting in that other Brahmin because of Baba. And if I constantly remember that that's coming from Baba, then I can say, okay, this brother is really quite humble and he's very sweet and blah, 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 but thanks, Baba, for showing me the importance of this quality through this person. And then I appreciate them and I validate them, but I don't get caught up in them, because that is really quite dangerous. And it's like, it is Rajyoga, you know, the connection of the soul with God. It's not connection with others. But we have to be here, and I think sometimes we don't get this right, and that's why probably one of the topics for the global functioning is looking after the family, because I can remember someone asking Sister Genti, you know, there's another Brahmin ill, is it karma to look after them? And of course it's not, it's our duty. But what happens, we sometimes get caught up in the physicality, and I can go and look after them and show my care that's been inspired from Baba, but I have to do both. I don't know if that helps.
I was about to change the subject, but I think let's ask rather if anyone else has any questions.
Any more questions? Yes, okay. Somebody else? Anyone still awake? Oh, you're awake, okay, fine.
Okay, then maybe while we're waiting for the next person to walk to the mic, when you were talking, David, I was just thinking about one thing that I've found very beautiful is that Baba said in the Murli that Baba has come to teach us how to love. And the greatest love story is the love between me and me. And whilst Baba teaches us Raj Yoga, the product of Raj Yoga is that we become self-sovereigns. And so we really understand how beautiful and powerful we are. And the thing that is amazing is that the end of the study is that we enter a golden aged world where there's no God. So we become so self-contained or self-sufficient that there's no need for God even on the physical plane. And that's a very important thing for me, because it teaches me why Baba teaches us in the way he does. Even though Baba says constantly, remember me, what Baba is awakening is actually the completeness within me, because only Baba knows really how perfect and how wonderful I really am. So as I gaze into Baba, I get to really know who I am. And so when we reach that point where we truly appreciate ourselves, then that is what's going to make this world into heaven. And so the reason why I remembered that was because each of the examples, this is both the brother and sister mentioned, was that when we get attached to someone, it's really a reflection of something in us which is incomplete. And it's wonderful to be able to understand that our mission is to become complete. But maybe the illusion we have is that we need one other person to help us become complete. But Baba's vision is that each one of us is a complete self-sovereign, so independent that even Baba doesn't have to be with us. So if we keep that vision in front of us and understand our power and understand our beauty, you know, coming from South Africa, you would know Nelson Mandela's open inaugural speech when he first became president. He said, we are not afraid of actually our weaknesses, our darkness, but we are more afraid of our light. Because when we know how powerful and wonderful we are, we have to step and become that. And something for me with regards to self-respect is that when I know how beautiful I am I ready to stand on the stage and be free from the need of others? Can I really then say, I'm ready to serve and help? And so sometimes it's our own reservation And what has helped me on the path is one day I discovered how lazy I am. And it's something else which is an obstacle to the power of self-respect is our own laziness. You know, to become a king is not a small thing. It's work, it's hard work. I used to see the rehearsals that William had to make when he was being groomed. How to sit, how to eat, where to walk, which school to go to. And we are becoming world emperors. It's just no big thing. And we must remember that it's going to take constant attention from us to do the work to become such that at the end I become so whole that I don't even need God. That's why to keep our aim and objective is very important. So really keep it in mind where I'm heading to. And it's not a small thing. And then we become, we don't create any more excuses. We don't give ourselves any more room to do funny things. This is work that we have to do and we have to get there. Anyway, I don't want to make it into a class, but I think you get that idea. It's about loving the self, and really reuniting with yourself.
Okay, final question. One sentence each, summary. How have you developed self-respect in one sentence?
I feel it's loving the self.
Loving the self, okay. Shri?
I feel it's falling in love with myself through Baba. Yeah, I'll agree with that one.
I could be easy and say yes, that is it. But I do think that's it. Actually, starting really to understand who I am.
Understand who I am. Okay. What? Where? We don't have any time.
What about you?
We decided that we're all asking you a question.
We've run out of time, folks. Thank you for coming. So.
Don't you all agree he should say something? Sorry, brother, you're not leaving.
I've been talking all the time.
No. What do you understand by self-respect?
Yeah.
Okay,
you really want to hear
you're
this?
one. Yeah, we're ready. Lunch is okay. 1:00, eh?
Well, in one sentence.
Couple of sentences.
Well, I think it's connected with recognizing your uniqueness, recognizing what you have to offer to God's task, recognizing what special abilities you have gained from Baba at this time, and getting busy in using them. As I feel it's not just a head thing. Yes, we have to be in the right consciousness and we have to have the right attitude. Very true. But actually it's only by doing that change happens. Doing, acting on it, working on it. Sometimes you find a soul, reads Murli so many times, it's good, but you also have to do it. You have to put the Murli into practice. And I feel that by actually taking part in service programs, taking part in whatever is being organized, really helps you to discover your own self. And then you develop belief. You begin to believe in yourself. You develop a confidence in your own ability. And it's true, you slip up and you fall a few times, but that's part of becoming strong. So I would feel that with a sincere and pure motive, to put into action the things which I'm hearing from God's directions, and to believe that this is what I need in order to make me complete. Not to avoid, to evade, or to postpone, but to do it anyway, because that's the process of making myself strong. So I think a big hand for our 3 speakers. Thank you very much. And so we'll end off with a few moments of meditation, and then I think it's lunchtime. Okay? Om Shanti. Mm-hmm.